What up, Pittsburgh Steelers fans? Matty P here with another episode of Steelers War, and we're talking all things linebacker. Given Elandon Roberts was injured in the game against the Cardinals with that groin injury, he didn't practice Monday. He's not listed on the practice report now for Tuesday, as I go live with this show at the end of Monday on the East Coast. And so, obviously, the Steelers brought in Blake Martinez a few weeks back off the Carolina Panthers practice squad onto the roster. They brought back Myles Jack. They brought them back for depth after we lost Quan Alexander and Cole Holcomb earlier in the season in back-to-back weeks. Now, obviously, Myles Jack was on the couch, retired. Blake Martinez was with NFL teams, but not necessarily starting for anyone. He did say when he was brought in that he was talking with Carolina about moving off their practice squad. Both guys need conditioning in many ways. Obviously, Myles Jack more. Both guys need to get used to the Steelers' defense. And so that is why we didn't see them last week. What we did see last week, though, was that Michael Walker is clearly a third linebacker for them, or in an ideal world, or a second linebacker in this situation if Elandon Roberts is out. He did have the green dot, struggled with the communication. That's something but Martinez and Myles Jack both have more experience in than Michael Walker. The other thing, too, is that Michael Walker's coverage situation, he's done well and better for the Steelers than what I expected compared to what he did at the Falcons. Now, that can be hard to assess with schematics compared to as I say, what we saw in Atlanta from him. He was better with that with the Steelers. Mark Robinson clearly is a backup more for Elandon Roberts, the thumper sort of style linebacker. He's a second-year guy. That's fair enough, especially when you're taken, in the seventh round as well, and you're learning a new position. You can't expect him to come in this situation, let alone not when he's being able to prep the full game. Yes, it should be next man up. Yes, it should be. Everyone's being prepared to be able to play and ready to do really well, but the reality is it's the NFL. This is the hardest football league in the world, and that is difficult when you think about the context of Mark Robinson. So that brings us back to Myles Jack and Blake Martinez, because the reality is that Elandon Roberts, even if he's good to go, is not going to be able to necessarily do what he always does. That means we're going to have to rely on these two blokes, and Michael Walker. You probably want four inside guys there. You need four inside guys there. I think it is pretty telling, though, with everything going on at inside linebacker, the fact that they haven't put in Nick Herbig into any of those roles. They've kept him outside, but he's doing wonders outside. I think he's had a terrific year statistically from considering how many snaps he's played, and the benefit in the rotation of outside linebackers that he provides for the Pittsburgh Steelers. However, I wanted to look into Martinez and Myles Jack. We're going to assess them on three things. We're going to assess them on experience, tackling ability and tackling production, and coverage, stats so far in their career. Now, you can go find people that will tell you all about the tape. That's cool, but they're also playing different schemes with different teams, and therefore I wanted to see generally how that's all looking when you stack them up against the current Steelers linebacking crop. So I basically pulled a head-to-head comparison for you from StatHead Football that compares Martinez and Myles Jack. We obviously know a bit more about Myles Jack to Michael Walker they've got right now, Elandon Roberts they've got right now, who are struggling to be fit, and of course Quan and Cole, because we've lost them this season and they were our starters, and it's nice context for how things are going. So if you compare them all together, Quan Alexander's played the most games at 104, followed by Elandon Roberts played the most games with 119, Myles Jack 103. Quan Alexander 104, as I said. So those three guys are super experienced, right? Whereas Holcomb was the young gun out of all of this lot. And that's a really big thing. And if you think about having Quan and Elandon together, that's been a real difference this season versus last season, where Myles Jack was learning a new defense, didn't play as well, had some injuries, and Devin Bush was a ball watcher, right? But let's look at more deeply at Martinez and Myles Jack in that sense. So in terms of experience, as I say, I do like Martinez. There's the amount of experience for his age at 28, 84 games that he's played. That I think is a massive plus, particularly when you're comparing him to Michael Walker with 52, and certainly to Mark Robinson when we're talking in the tens of games. Now, let's look at tackling and pass rush. So if you look at sacks overall, Quan Alexander has 13.5 sacks in his career. Blake Martinez has 13. Now, remember, the difference here is that Like, Quan Alexander's played a whole 10 games more from a starting perspective. He's appeared in 20 games more as a player. Elandon Roberts has 12 and a half. So Martinez definitely brings, and Elandon Roberts has been playing a lot long, like has been playing the same amount of time as Martinez, but has played, started, a few more games as well. So Martinez is a bit better on the sack production as well. So I like that it's a lot more than Michael Walker. It's more than Myles Jack. It's like double Myles Jack's career sacks. So that gives the Steelers some pass rush. And that's really important because Elandon Roberts has offered that threat for the Steelers, this season, particularly when, they've been able to move Quan or Holcomb around a bit more in coverage. When you look at overall tackles, Martinez, again, second on that list behind Quan. Again, that's really huge when it's ahead of guys like Jack and Roberts. You look at, and that's solo tackles too. I look less at combined tackles sometimes because I want to see guys going down there and stopping the run with an inside linebacker. But even if you look at combined tackles, Martinez is the bigger guy here with 706 tackles. You look at tackles for a loss, he does stoop down to 39 there, but you've got to look at the situations he's put in, and he has been put in better situations in terms of coverage and being more of a coverage linebacker than Roberts, and in certain times, Quan Alexander. You look at quarterback hits too. He's middle of the pack there between this group with 18. I think that's a pretty decent amount. Yes, if you do it as a compared to his overall tackle number, it's a bit lower, but his sack number's high. You'd rather him actually sack the quarterback than just have a quarterback hit. So I'm cool with that. Interceptions, Quan has the most there, but then Martinez is in there with 4. So as I said, you're starting to see an all-rounder. We'll go into a bit more into coverage in a moment, but you're starting to see an all-rounder when it comes to the linebacker position, both across tackles and pass coverage. Pass defense, he's also ranked second there. So again, feeding this narrative of the all-rounder. Forced fumbles, he does stoop a bit lower there, but as I said, if you're going to be more focused on coverage, if you're sacking the quarterback, if you're doing all of these things, you're obviously coming down to that line of scrimmage, which is something that we've seen from Elandon Roberts. You like coming past that line of scrimmage, getting into the defense, the backfield there. You want to see that necessarily. Like, it's not going to be completely judged off his forced fumbles. So that's pretty cool. Then you look at, in terms of actual pass coverage, with the completion percentage allowed. Again, Martinez 80% there, but you've got to. This is a really difficult thing to judge because you've got to look at play by play. You've got to look at games and schemes and all the rest of it. But I want to look at more a bit around yards per completion because obviously you've got the air yards that come through, and then you've got to obviously have a look there in terms of how they're stopping that. And Martinez allows only 9.1 yards per completion. That's only second to Quan Alexander with 8.3. I do really think that that's a big deal because when you look at, that's per the actual completion, but you look at the yards per target, it's pretty even there with 7.3. So there's only that like 1.8 difference. That's actually really stable. If you look at those sort of numbers across the league, that's actually a really good thing. Again, when you're looking at that, it's obviously not coverage, but you're looking at the pass rush per se. 28 pressures. I really like that. That's only second to Quan and Elandon Roberts, who have played more games than Martinez, like in some instances more than 20 games more. And then the big thing for me overall, which is for any defensive player, I talk about this a lot with the safeties and particularly, is missed tackles. Blake Martinez has the least amount of missed tackles in his career with 5.6. Now, again, you can say, hang on, but he's played lesser games than Roberts, Jack, and Alexander. But he's had the most tackles. So he's a clean tackler. Like, there's no excuse there. He's had the most tackles combined in solo. 5.6% is huge, especially when he's played the most amount of defensive snaps in games he's been available with 63.4. Jack's the only one ahead of him, 72.6. Jack did rotate around the linebacking core, including doing some pass rush at the Jags. So what we get, if we look at, to wrap this all up, is if we look at experience, coverage, and tackling ability, it's very clear that Martinez really offers something in this Steelers linebacking core down the stretch. He's fitter, probably, than Myles Jack. Yes, Myles Jack's got experience in this defense, but this guy is able to start. He is starting caliber. He's young too. When you look at it, actually, like at only 28 years, 29 years old. And that's a roughly the same age about a lot of these guys. But he does seem that fresher, faster piece. He is more experienced, certainly than Michael Walker. Not necessarily. Myles Jack's got more experience otherwise there, but the statistical production is definitely in Martinez's favor. And I'm kind of surprised they picked up a guy like this after the trade deadline. That says a lot about what's going on at Carolina for all of those of you that are questioning everything that's happening with the Steelers. So yeah, actually really pumped to see what happens in the lineup. And remember, the Steelers were in color rush this week. So Steelers 7-2 in color rush. I have an unfortunate, situation where I was there for one of the losses in the color rush against the Bills, but that is what it is. Anyway, hope you like the show. All things linebackers. As I said, if you hit that show, if you liked it, hit that like button. And if you're not a sub yet to our channel and you're interested in our content, please hit that sub button. We are on that race to 500 as we close out the season. As always, go Steelers.